Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really challenging, honestly kind of uncomfortable core conflict. If you're a sensitive soul or maybe navigating ADHD, you've probably got this fiercely deep, beautiful sense of justice, right? Well, today we're unpacking why holding on to that intense desire for fairness might actually be the very thing burning you out. And we'll look at why true wisdom actually means learning the profound art of letting go. So let's just jump right into the deep end with a pretty jarring quote directly from the source material. Wisdom is the opposite of justice. Now, wait a minute. That sounds completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, we're raised to believe that being wise and being just go hand in hand. But the source makes a bold, line-in-the-sand claim right out of the gate. Wisdom is all about letting go, whereas justice is about not letting go. It's about holding on. Let's see how these two concepts actually force us down two entirely different paths. On one hand, you've got the path of justice. For anyone with a strong moral compass, this feels like the only right way to go. But here's the catch. It requires holding tight, demanding fairness, and honestly, completely draining your nervous system in the process. On the other hand, we have the path of wisdom. This is about letting go, moving on, and crucially, preserving your energy so you can actually survive and live your life. The fundamental choice presented here is literally this. You can either be right and stand on the side of justice, or you can be wise and actually move on with your life. You kind of have to choose one. So how exactly does this wisdom lead to, actual living? The source breaks this down into what's called the unbroken chain. It's a mechanical, sequential process. Step 1 is wisdom. If you are truly operating from a place of wisdom, it automatically leads you to step 2, which is compromise. Now, what does compromise inevitably require? Step 3, sacrifice. And ultimately, being willing to make that sacrifice is exactly what unlocks step 4, which is life itself. Now, how we define that third step, sacrifice, is where things get really, really tough. Because the source points out that a sacrifice is, by definition, often unfair or unjust. I mean, that's literally why it's called a sacrifice. You're giving something up. And if you're someone dealing with rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, giving in can feel like this devastating, world-ending personal defeat. But even though it feels deeply unfair, making that sacrifice is a profoundly wise strategy. It's an unavoidable requirement for compromise, and by extension, a strict requirement for your own survival. Which brings us to a major tough love reality check from our source text. Look, as beautiful as justice, fairness, and balance are to a sensitive mind, they are ultimately dead concepts in nature. They're abstract human inventions. There are symbols, ideals. But what they are not is life. Life itself doesn't inherently contain these concepts. We just project them onto a world that, quite frankly, doesn't operate by our rules. If justice is a dead concept, what is actually alive? Well, real life is made up of constant small insults to our sense of justice. It's everyday unfairness, it's massive power asymmetries, it's imbalances in endowments, meaning, the gifts the universe hands out are definitely not distributed equally. The playing field is literally anything but level. The source deliberately shatters this Disneyland fantasy that the universe was somehow created to cater to our needs and hopes. And here is an incredibly uncomfortable truth that we just have to look right in the eye. In the real world, cunning, scheming, callousness, and a total lack of empathy are actually rewarded all the time. Now, watching bad behavior win, that is incredibly dysregulating for highly empathetic people. It makes this truth such a bitter pill to swallow. But because life is completely impersonal, sometimes all we can do is just sit back and be a mute audience. Bad behavior wins sometimes, and the universe simply does not step in to magically correct the balance. So the million-dollar question is, what happens to you when you refuse to accept this? When you constantly ruminate on how unfair everything is, which is a trap so many folks with rejection sensitive dysphoria fall into, you're basically engaging in a self-destructing strategy. Running that mental loop of injustice isn't scoring you a moral victory. It's just burning you out while the rest of the world keeps on spinning. Nurturing grudges and personal rivalries, it's simply not a winning strategy if you want to survive. To get past this, you need a massive paradigm shift. You have to let go of the fantasy, the idea of treating life like a theme park where the playing field is perfectly level and a universe is just waiting to serve you. You have to trade that in for the reality, which is an impersonal system full of power imbalances where your primary, absolute goal is survival. Letting go and moving on requires a conscious, active acceptance of this reality. You literally must accept that the world is not built to be fair. Because of this stark reality, a truly wise person is highly selective. They pick their battles carefully, but more importantly, wise individuals never feel disrespected or undignified when they have to yield, give up, or submit. Why? Because they are entirely grounded in the realities of survival. Surrender, when you use it in the right context, is actually a wildly successful survival strategy. The trap of derivative self-worth. The source draws a really stark line between two types of self-worth. First, you've got derivative self-worth. This is when your self-esteem is completely tied up in always prevailing or eternally winning some imagined competition. It's totally dependent on being treated justly by the world, which makes it entirely reactive. Then you have primary self-worth. This emanates from the inside. It's your core identity. Primary self-worth basically means you are a diamond. Your value does not drop just because someone threw you in the mud. It is 100% independent of whether the world is playing fair today or not. If your self-worth is derivative, meaning you depend on justice to feel good about who you are, the source argues that you are operating from a deeply unhealthy place. It usually means you're either wrestling with a sense of entitlement or you're frantically trying to soothe your own existential anxiety. When your self-worth hinges on fairness, every single slight feels like a devastating personal rejection, and that practically guarantees a life full of profound bitterness and constant disappointment. Which brings us to this incredibly blunt, foundational takeaway from the text. I'll just give it to you straight, exactly how the source emphasizes it. The world and the people in it owe you nothing. Not justice, not fairness, not a level playing field. No one owes you anything. Period. Yeah, it's a really harsh pill to swallow, but swallowing it is the absolute key to unlocking true resilience. The economics of a finite life. Look, life is an expendable, perishable resource. For anyone who deals with sensory overload or burnout, you know this on a visceral level. Your time, your energy, and your health are incredibly scarce. Spoon theory is very, very real here. Every single time you nurture a grudge over an injustice or fixate on something that isn't fair, you are spending down those finite slices of your pie. You are paying for a dead concept using your very real, very limited life force. And what's worse, we often spend those precious resources fighting against unsolvable realities. The source delivers this brutally objective assessment. Most issues simply cannot be resolved. Most diseases cannot be cured. Most wounds cannot be healed. And honestly, most people are less than morally upstanding. The advice here is completely unapologetic. Radically accept this reality and save yourself. So the core, actionable takeaway of this entire analysis boils down to this. Invest in life. Stop pouring your scarce energy, your precious time, and your health into counterfactual, unrealistic ideologies of perfect fairness. Stop investing in abstract nonsense that doesn't actually exist in nature. Be wise. Conserve your energy for actually living. I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to carry with you today, knowing that your time and energy are completely finite, and knowing that the universe owes you absolutely nothing. What will you do? Will you continue to invest your scarce time in dead principles of perfect justice? Or will you let go, be wise, and actually choose life? Because choosing life is the ultimate act of self-care. The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.